Hi, I'm back with another video on vertigo. And if you have vertigo, you're going to be very excited to watch this video because I'm not just going to show you what to do to get immediate relief. I'm going to show you what's behind this as far as a root cause. The most common type of vertigo is this BPPV, benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. It's a fancy name for these little tiny calcium crystals that have broken off and they travel to another part of the ear, and it creates dizziness and spinning when you're in different positions. If you're bending over, you're going to feel dizzy and spinning. If we take a look at the ear, we have information that comes into the ear and it goes to this little membrane right here, and then the vibrations transfer over to a different mechanism. This thing right here, which is just quite fascinating because it's a 3D gyroscope that allows you to know where you are in certain positions and also in motion, which is quite miraculous how it works. So basically the most common form of vertigo is when the calcium crystals break off right here and they end up in these little circular canals right through here. You have these tiny little hairs in the inside of your ear that pick up information, and these hairs are connected to nerves that go into the brain. In order for this to be very, very sensitive, there has to be a gel around it. And your body's amazing because in order to really make this super sensitive, you need to add mass to the top of this gel layer to enhance the effectiveness of these hairs picking up more information. So these little tiny calcium crystals, which are normal in this position, are just little weights that are stuck in the gel. And so it's a normal thing, and it's quite miraculous. But the big question I want to answer right now is, why is it that some of these crystals start dislodging and moving in different locations in different parts of the ear where they should not be? Postmenopausal women are higher at risk for this. And then the other clue is there's actually these tiny little proteins that are supposed to keep this calcium in this place in the body. They're called calcium binding proteins. So I did a deep dive into those proteins, and there's several of them, and I wanted to know what controls them. And I found out what controls them. They're regulated by vitamin D3. That's right. In fact, a lot of people who have vertigo are extremely deficient in vitamin D3. And it makes sense when you step back and look at it because vitamin D, out of all the vitamins, has so many different functions. It controls 2,400 different genes. So it's not just about calcium metabolism or involved in bone tissue, but it's involved in your immune system. It's involved as an anti-inflammatory. It's involved in regulating your blood pressure. Apparently, it's also involved in the calcium binding proteins, which are supposed to keep these guys in check. And so when I looked at the research on this, wow, there is a tremendous amount of research on vitamin D and vertigo. As far as taking vitamin D and even preventing this type of vertigo, here's one right here: prevention of recurrent benign paroxysmal positional vertigo with vitamin D supplementation, a meta-analysis. Now, there is some of the research that's mixed, and I figured out why that is. Because unless you're going to take enough vitamin D, for some people, it's not going to work. If you're going to take just a tiny amount, and with all the barriers that people have with vitamin D, genetic, if you have insulin resistance, if you're overweight, also, more importantly, if you're not taking enough vitamin D every day, then you're not going to actually create the effect. Because the type of vitamin D that you need to really control this is in a part of the system where your body needs, at least as a maintenance, between 6,000 and 10,000 IUs of vitamin D3 every single day. In other words, if you look at the research that shows people taking enough vitamin D, you're going to see a really good outcome versus if you're taking just a tiny bit, 600 IUs, which is the RDA for vitamin D, which is ridiculous. You're probably not going to see a lot of results, especially if you're just taking it like once a week or once every other week. Vitamin D actually rebuilds this crystal anchoring system that I'm talking about right here. There's a couple other little pieces of this puzzle I want to share with you because vitamin D doesn't work without magnesium. And then I also did a deep dive into magnesium in vertigo, and I found some really interesting information. Magnesium is one of the master controllers over calcium. So the combination of vitamin D3 and magnesium, I think, would be the best solution for vertigo. And I would also throw in there vitamin K2. Why? Because vitamin K2 helps tell the body where calcium should go. If you're missing vitamin K2, you end up with more calcium in the wrong place. And that could be related to this right here. There's just not a lot of research on K2, but there is research on vitamin D3 and magnesium, but there's separate studies. I have not found any study that actually tests for both of these items. I think because they want to isolate one variable at a time, and it's hard to know what's working. But what I would do if I were you, if I had this condition, I would take both of these and I would add this right here, and I would probably take no less than 10,000 IUs every single day. So now that you have that, when you start taking vitamin D and you're trying to solve this problem, it could take a week, it could take 2 weeks, it could take a little bit longer because you're actually going after a root cause. And so many people are so deficient in vitamin D, it just doesn't happen overnight when you take a little vitamin D. So what can you do in the meantime to resolve vertigo? There is a great simple procedure called the Epley maneuver. So let's roll right into it right now.
I'll bring my legs up onto the table. I'll turn my head 45 degrees to the left, and then I'll lie back. My head is supported on the bed, but just off the edge of the pillow, so that my head is tilted slightly below horizontal. Here I'm going to note if I have vertigo and how strong the vertigo is. Okay, now I'll sit back up, pause here for a few seconds to let everything calm back down, and then turn your head 45 degrees to the right and repeat. I'll tip back. My head is 45 degrees to the right and slightly below horizontal, supported on the bed off the edge of the pillow. Here I'll note any vertigo symptoms and how severe they are. And then I'll return to sitting. For the purposes of this demonstration, let's say that when I tilted my head back, I had severe vertigo when my head was turned to the right. That indicates that the right ear canal is affected. So I want to do the treatment on the right side. I'll explain this as I go along. I'll bring my legs up onto the table. I'll turn my head to the right 45 degrees and then lie back. I'm going to stay in this position until the vertigo stops and then wait another 30 seconds. After that 30 seconds has passed, I'll move on to the second position. I'll turn my head to the left so that it's now 45 degrees to the left. Again, I'll wait until the vertigo stops and then another 30 seconds. For severe cases, you might want to wait up to about a minute in each position. Okay, after the time has passed, I'll move into the third position, which is on my left side, with my head tilted down into the table about 45 degrees. You can go ahead and rest your head on the table, like this. Okay, after my vertigo stops and waiting another 30 seconds, I'll move into the final position. I'll sit up at the side with my chin tucked down. In this position, wait at least 30 seconds, and more than likely you'll need to wait a couple of minutes. You want to really rest in this position, let your head and everything settle back down again before you get up and move on with your activity.